Welcome back to DevelopLex. We're at the beautiful Botherum with Jon Carloftis. And if you aren't familiar with the story of Jon or the property that we're at, I think you'll enjoy this episode ahead. And just the impact both Jon has had on the property of restoring it, the impact Jon's had on Lexington, and making the built environment more beautiful, and the really cool story that Kentuckian has had nationally and internationally.
Nationally.
Well, welcome, Jon.
Hey, thank you. Thanks for having me on here.
So when somebody asks what you do, how do you describe that?
I'm a garden designer. So I have a degree and I have a business communications degree from UK, and best 12 years I ever spent. I'm just kidding. No, I did it in four. But then I got out of college and I was like, oh my gosh, I don't want to do this. You know, I want to landscape. And so I went back to school for a year and I took just all the classes I want to take: annuals, perennials, trees and shrubs. A lot, ag college. And then once I felt like, I've gardened my whole life. So, and that's what I love what I do. Every day is an adventure and fun. Mm-hmm. I love it. It's my hobby.
Tell us, that is not what I expected on your story. I just expected you to be like almost a savant as a child that was like shaping shrubs.
I was.
Okay.
I was.
The business communications thing threw me off a little bit there.
I just, so I went to UK and I joined an agriculture fraternity, AGR. And so I had to get a degree, and it was just very easy. And it didn't interfere with my social life,
Yeah.
in the fraternity.
Yeah.
And at school. Yeah, I was social chairman and everything. So I just did it because it was just easy, and but not really thinking about what I want to do. But this is what I've been doing my whole life.
Gotcha.
My whole life.
And so you grew up in Kentucky.
Yeah.
And then went to UK. And what's life look like since then?
Well, I had a chance. My best friend was a cheerleader at UK, and he became a model in New York City and said, I've got an apartment. I'm traveling to, he was traveling to Japan a lot, Tokyo. That was when it was, their economy was just kind of booming. And he said, come up, spend the summer. And I thought I'd do it. Why not? Before I get started into working, And then I made these cards that said, I had to work. So, it was expensive. They said, Jon Carloftis, rooftop garden designer. I'd never been on a roof in my life, but I knew how to garden. I just gave them around the Upper East Side, gave them to doormen, elevator men. I said, give it to the person on top. And a woman called me, 1160 Park Avenue, 10128, and she had this huge terrace, a very contemporary famous art collection. And she let me take one little box, it was like wooden boxes up there. And by the end of the summer, I was running the whole thing. And through her, just word of mouth. I've never advertised.
So had never been on a roof and went to New York and thought, unless I go to Central Park, there's probably not a ton of places I can do garden design outside of on roofs.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to take that.
Yeah.
I'll design your roof for you. So how did that turn into more?
Well, I did. So I kind of brought a little bit of Kentucky to New York. So once I was up there, and I would say, hey, why don't you grow tomatoes up here? This is the perfect light. And, you can grow them in containers. Why don't you grow, I'd bring tobacco sticks from Kentucky when I would come back, make tripods out of them. very beautiful and rustic. Very, my aesthetic really fit in well with super rich people
Yeah.
because it's so simple. I'm the opposite of Las Vegas. I like a flashy car, but everything else is pretty organic, and you know what I mean. I call it simple, but maybe it's not. But they loved, I was growing, corn. I was doing, pumpkins on these big penthouses, vegetables, herbs. That was just part of it. But people loved it. And she, through her, so she was friends with Estee Lauder's, best friends with her daughter-in-law and the whole family. And so they would do dinners up there, and I would have it all done up,
Wow.
and, with the beautiful flowers. So it's just all word of mouth.
I was going to say, what a marketing campaign to have gotten in with someone that was reputable enough to then suggest. It just sounds like you got into some of the right circles.
Very lucky. It was tough.
I was going to say.
It was not easy.
Yeah.
She was very. I've seen servicemen go up that service elevator, all big and they would come down whimpering. Okay, let me just tell you, I've never seen anybody like her. She was something. But through her, I did a lot of art collectors, so I got to see beautiful, beautiful houses, like the new houses, side new house. I did their garden. It was very simple, just super, super green. And then through that, I got lucky and I got a call from this person, and she left. This is the old time, when you come home, that little tape on your.
Yeah. I imagine Seinfeld, where they play the messages back in Seinfeld. Yeah.
Hey, I got this call. I got home and he said, "Hey, this is Julie Moore, and I was on one of your rooftop gardens. I'd love for you to come over and take a look at mine." I said, "Sure." So I went over there, and it was one of those buildings where people have the whole floor. So when you get out of the elevator, you're right in their living room. You know what I mean? And I was like, Julianne Moore, Boogie Nights. I was like, so but I did 3 guards for her, and then ended up meeting Edward Norton. And when he bought Richard Gere's penthouse at his place, Richard Gere had this Tibetan temple, as I guess one would do, on a He's very elaborate. It was an Architectural Digest. I remember seeing it. But when he sold it to Edward Norton, after they were in that movie, Primal Fear, where he played a Kentuckian, remember that great movie? That made Edward Norton famous, that movie. They made him remove everything. So I started from scratch. And, I did it with, like, Edward's aesthetic, very organic, again. Natural wood boxes, and then I did Mike Myers, his triplex.
Little known name, Mike Myers.
Guess what he collects? KFC paraphernalia.
Really, I could 100. That's like the least surprising.
He had a whole wall of it, and I went to Louisville Stoneware and got salt and pepper shakers for him. Those KFC.
That's awesome.
The buckets. Mm-hmm. Gave to him.
He probably looked at you like you're the most famous man in the world being from Kentucky. You probably just don't meet a ton of Kentucky. There's so many things I could unpack from that. I want to, before we get too far away from your upbringing, which we don't typically spend so much time on an upbringing in DevelopLex, but you're in such a niche and in such a, I think you bring beauty to a lot of things, and that's obviously a skill, or you wouldn't be as successful as you are. Tell us a little bit. I kind of made the savant shrub joke early, but I do mean that. How did you realize you were good at what you're doing? Was there affirmation? Like, I have so many questions. Just tell us a little bit about your upbringing and like how you got interested in what you're doing.
Well, my parents bought, on my mother's side, we've been here 230 years. We're Clay County folks. so don't mess with us. All right, I just tell you.
How many generations is that?
Like 10.
Whoa.
The first people in. Daddy's side is 200 years of Pineville, Kentucky. But they bought this piece of property when they married in 1949, and it was surrounded by the Daniel Boone National Forest. It's 50 acres, and no neighbors. Our water, there was no city water, so we had to run pipe 2 miles up on our property to a spring. And then every Sunday I'd go with Daddy and we'd bleed air out of the pipes to get pressure, Only if you grew up in the country would you know that stuff. But he would teach me all the trees all along the way when I was little, and it just was an amazing place. We didn't have a TV. We have a room, just like a little library, beautiful books, and I read history, and then this is what I do every morning. I get up, and I go out. I have to be outside. You know what I mean? And when I was little, they would say spring was here. I have a picture. It's me in my wheelbarrow with my dog and a cat. And they go, spring is here, because I would just dig all day long. So my older brother's 5 years older. He was the hunter, fisherman, bodybuilder, Mr. EKU. And my oldest brother had birds. He's the brain. He's a retired judge. And he had peacocks. We had peacocks growing up, and we had a parrot for 38 years that bit my finger off. Didn't like that thing. but the garden has always been my thing, because it makes something beautiful, and it's kind of you can work and toil and sweat, and then you look back and you go, God, instant gratification. Not everything is like that,
SV and Stone Commercial Real Estate is a full-service commercial real estate firm located in Lexington, Kentucky. Affiliated with the SVN International Network, SVN has over 200 offices across the globe. The SVN Stone team consists of experienced commercial real estate advisors in the heart of the Bluegrass. SVN helps their clients with commercial property sales, leasing, investments, and property management. Let SVN help you with your commercial real estate needs. Check us out at svnstone.com.
And so, traveling back to Kentucky, what are some of the projects that people would recognize that they may not have associated with your work?
Well, Castle and Key. I mean, that's the gift that keeps on giving. It just, and they put my name into every tour. I'm part of the tour, and what Will Arvin is so great about, I come back there every other week just to. They have people that work there. But me and my crew can come in and we'll, fluff it up. Like we're back there every month at least. So that keeps it keeps it the way I want it to be. Maker's Mark. When Rob Samuels took over from his dad, he had me down there and he said, "Now I don't know what we're going to do, but I want to do something with you." I ended up redoing the whole thing. And that was great because, like with Castle Key, it's we're just kind of resurrecting something. But I didn't have any plans to follow. I just kind of did it intuitively. Now the plans are coming out the wazoo. People are sending things in. My grandfather worked there, whatever. But before that, I never saw anything. I just kind of did it the way I felt like it would be done. And Maker's Mark, they already had a well-oiled machine, So then I got involved on that one because I'm more than just the landscape guy. Because all of a sudden, when he asked me to do it, I said, well, before I say yes, one day I did 10 or 12 tours, one right after another, different tour people, to watch how I could make it better. Because that's what I do. You know what I mean? Like how to make the meeting places. I came up with the idea of those cobblestone circles because we would meet at the first place, and then the second place is never enough room, and people get their feet muddy. And I was always so. I'm good with dogs and horses. I'm a whisperer. I really am with the dog and horse. And I'd start by the second circle. People just stop. You know, they know I do things that are intuitive, like create and garden, where you kind of know what's next, and you leave this room going into it. So he'll tell you, I helped him navigate, 100,000 people better. That was not even my part to do, but I get involved. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And he appreciates that. Rob really appreciates it.
I keep thinking about, where we're sitting today. There's a lot of beauty. I keep thinking about New York and how you went to a place that I don't know that a lot of people would consider naturally beautiful. And I just can't imagine the dynamic of living there and thinking, it's just interesting. You kind of touched on it a minute ago. You just make things more beautiful. And so you decided, I'm going to go to this very built environment and add a touch of beauty to it. I guess what have been the different, and I'm not sure the stint of your stay there and your time in Kentucky as it relates to that, but what kind of different dynamics have you had at this point in your career versus when you were on rooftops and really trying to make something that's very industrial, very, you're probably navigating around HVAC units, and I just can't even imagine. I'm still baffled.
Well, let me just tell you how the day would go. You have to go out of the city to go get the plants, materials, and containers. And then later on, I bought a house in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, which is 60 miles away. And I'd have my carpenter out there, and I'd buy from the local nurseries. So I would come in on my way, get up early, stop at my nursery, buy my shrubs, trees, and I'd go to the other nursery and I make everything pleasant. I like to, and I become friends with people. I love people's backgrounds, I find, whoever, a Chinese lady was the one that grew all my annuals and perennials, didn't speak a word of English, but we communicated, and she helped make me successful. And I was her best customer, so I made her successful. Then you come in, you go in, fight traffic, go through the tunnel, fight traffic. I always drove the biggest Dodge Ram truck that I could get, and I get there, double park, and I had my guys there in the city. They would meet me. Somebody'd have to watch the truck. We'd have to navigate through. Nothing was OSHA. These old pre-war buildings, everything was like a little rabbit's warren, you know what I mean? To get down there to it, every step. No hand trucks would really work. And you're hand carrying all this stuff. Then you have to deal with the superintendent. Then you have to go into the elevator, and that was the toughest part. Because they were real angry for being in an elevator for all day long, and they would make your life miserable. And they go, Kentucky, yeah, Kentucky. Yeah. So I always bought little bottles, those little cheap bottles of bourbon. And that's what I'd toss.
By the end of the day, those guys were slurring Kentucky.
I would organize their trips because I said, tell me about Kentucky. And I said, well, it's beautiful. It is beautiful because, they didn't think of anything beyond Jersey, what I mean? Or the Poconos, you know what I mean? And, but I ended up having, just a wonderful relationship. Then you get to the top. Sorry, I'm not even there yet. Then you get to the penthouse, and then the house manager, the cook, the secretary, and of course the lady of the house who I worked for. But it's all the stuff that you have to get through. And a lot of people, if I thought about it enough, I would probably say, well, I don't know how I'm gonna do this. But that's just, I had this conversation with him. You just do it. You know what I mean? Nothing. And like like here I'll be working, on a job in Louisville on a rooftop or whatever. And, one of my guys, they'll say that's never been there to New York. Never had to work in New York. And they'll go, oh gosh, oh, we got all these problems. I said, you ain't got no problem. Wait till you have everything stolen out of your truck. Wait till you have, 10 tickets in one day. Back then they were $55. By the time I left, it was about $185 a piece. But everything was a struggle. And that's why nothing on God's earth, nothing bothers me. Mm-hmm. Whatever happens, it all happens.
Yeah.
I'm just going to make it happen.
Craftsman Contractors is Central Kentucky's one-stop shop for roofing, windows, siding, and gutters. CraftsmanContractors.com/contact us will get you straight to the form you need so that their team will get in touch about your project. Or just text Steven at 859-246-0108. When they finish your project of windows, siding, gutters, or roofing, you'll see what they mean when they say we build with integrity. And so give us a little background on this slice of heaven that we're sitting in right now and what the Botherum is and what you've crafted into.
Well, this place was built in 1851. He married Cassius Clay's sister, Sally Ann, and she died after 1 year, back in 1819, I think, or 1820. And then he built this house in her honor. They call it the Taj Mahal of Kentucky. So 30 years later, he built this house in her honor. And he was the president of the Northern Bank of Kentucky, very close friends with Lincoln. Lincoln
and
was here many times.
Who again?
Madison Conyers Johnson. This is why this is Madison Place. And he hired John McMurtry, one of our famous architects, who was he's like me. He was an architect builder, and I'm a designer. I install. I just don't design it and think it's going to happen, because things go wrong. You got to be. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. I always. Anybody that's an architect, they better go there, and you need to watch how this. You know what I'm saying? You can sit back and draw anything. But so I have a kinship with this place. But my senior year in college, I bartended a party here, and it was in 1988. And I remember getting the address. You couldn't see the house because of all the scrub. Everything was grown up. And I had to push through the gate, and I got inside, and I set up a bar, and I was like, dang, this is my kind of house. I've always loved Greek revival. My mother, she made a joke, when I was little. She said, honey, you'd like an outhouse if it had columns on it. And I said, yes, ma'am, I would. I do like a column. But I have wanted this house ever since I was in here. That little hallway where I had the bartending thing set up, it's just like, I was like, who would take the time to do this 14-foot ceiling that's arched? Somebody I'd be friends with, somebody that loves beauty and everywhere they look, And it finally came up for sale secretly, and never on the market. And I nabbed it in 2012. Took a year and 6 days to restore it, which was record time. I was a general contractor, When I bought it, they said, well, here are the companies that do this for all these historic homes. And I was like, well, you don't know me. I can get a book and figure out most anything, And I ended up winning the highest honor in the state for this, for this restoration from historic. And I just won the one over there for the J.C. Cockhouse, which is the original summer kitchen. I just won that a couple of months ago. And then redid the formal garden and got another one for that, restoring that. But this is my dream. I love it. I think if you're bringing up New York, I don't even think about it hardly anymore. But when I'm thinking, now that you're bringing it up, I'm thinking, all the things that I had to do to get just to the top to make beauty. It's easier.
And that's kind of where I was thinking, like in terms of the contrast And I truly cannot emphasize enough. I think there's a few layers of contrast. One, I'm sitting here listening to you talk, and the branches are just kind of like elegantly like moving behind you, and I'm thinking, man, this is just calm.
Yeah.
Like I don't
In downtown Lexington.
in downtown Lexington, very calm. And the projects that you named in Kentucky, which I want to go to in just a minute, is all of those are beautiful. But I also think that they just, everything that I know that you're associated with in my research is just like calm and like tranquil and beautiful.
Thank you. I don't knowingly do that. You know what I mean? I just make it. It ends up being that way, and I hear this from a lot of people. So I just had 30 women here from the Louisville Women's Club for a tour this morning. Last night, 60 people for a sit-down dinner in that driveway for UK Markey Cancer Foundation, and people are they're like, "What? Where are we?"
Yeah.
Downtown Lexington. But everybody, they come here and there's everywhere you look, there's a place to just curl up and kind of get comfortable,
Yeah.
So I don't know why I'm doing it. It just happens that way.
Well, you did something right.
Yeah.
What are some of your principles that when you meet with somebody the first time, what is that Jon Carloftis style that you want to be known for?
Well, the first thing that I do is I try to find out everything about it from them. I'm trying to make a lot of different people happy. And in the end, if you do your research, and that's how I try to pull things. What are you going to use this for? Do you have kids? Do you have a dog? I look in their house and I can tell what colors they like. It's pretty, just sleuthing. You know what I mean? I never find out about anybody though. I had this amazing kid that worked for me. He graduated from landscape architecture. 4.5 years he worked for me, Thomas McKinley. But he would look people up, look at I said, I don't want to see it. I don't want to see it. I don't want to. I just want to experience it from the time I get in that driveway. You know what I mean? And see what I experienced. But in the end, trying to figure out how to make them happy. And then I put my touch on it. And that's how I keep all these clients for so long. Like the Bruckheimers, Jerry and Linda Bruckheimer. I've been with them 19 years.
Wow.
And I know exactly what they like. She doesn't like flowers. She doesn't like the color blue. She doesn't like ferns. All these things would be a game changer if I was going to marry somebody or even date them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I had to get into her head. I was thinking, why don't you like flowers? It's like, what is going on? But she lives in Beverly Hills, where at her beautiful, famous house that was owned by Fatty Arbuckles, by the way, there's flowers upon flowers just to have flowers. You know what I mean? Disney World, it's just flower. So when she comes to Kentucky, she wants to see the raw beauty. So you see what I'm saying? That's just one of my clients. I just try to figure out what makes them tick and what they like.
The right partner can make or break your development project. That's why Bowman's integrated services, from landscape architecture to planning and engineering, are trusted by the region's top developers. With deep roots in Lexington and the backing of a national network, Bowman has helped shape some of Central Kentucky's most iconic projects. They know the land, the process, and what it takes to get things built. Ready to move forward with confidence? Call William Hodges, Regional Leader, at 859-309-6501.
What's your favorite plant? What's your signature in your personal spaces?
Yeah, I was curious. Same thing. You said you add a little bit of your signature on things.
Well, I love a hydrangea, and I love a fern. Never met one I didn't like, all of them. And then, so I'm unusual. Maybe it seems normal to me, but like those ladies today were talking about it. The pool, I always do orange and blue. I love it by a pool. I love blue flowers. And my formal garden is kind of purple and white. Back behind my house, there's another garden, blue and white, because my dining room's blue and white. So you look out. So I love color, but not every color. I don't like throwing them all together. Color is a big important part for me. Silver cars. You know what I mean? I like silver cars.
Yeah.
It all looks amazing.
Yellow labs.
With the orange tint.
With a little reddish tint. Actually, all my best girlfriends, same color. I had for Maker's Mark Steaks Day, your color, hair color. When Maker's Mark Steaks Day, I go with them, to the thing. Mm-hmm. Then I leave early, and I already have the caterer set up. So they come in. There's 75, maybe 100 people on 2 buses. They come here after the race, and one year, Rob Samuels introduced me under the ginkgo tree. And I'd asked some of my good girlfriends, I thought, well, I'm just going to get some real pretty girls up in here that people are going to like. Because all these folks are coming from all over the world, to this thing. And I looked out and I go, welcome, I have a type. I like blonde with a reddish tinge, just like my dogs. Consistent. And it is true. Also, there were like 7 of them. They all. There's something to be said about consistency, right?
Yeah.
So, thinking about where Lexington has been, and you seem to know an incredible amount of history of where it's been, what are you excited for the future of Lexington?
I just want to say, first of all, I've always loved Lexington. I didn't live here, I didn't grow up here, but this is where we came almost every day for something. We did all of our shopping up here when I was little. And all my clothes, I remember going downtown to every little store. I can remember everything about it. Heimson's, Tots and Teens, I remember all that stuff. Myers. So I've been crazy about Lexington. Then when I went to college here, just loved it more. And so when I left, I thought I was going to come back. I got put on a different track. Mm-hmm. It became my, career became very successful, and I was loving it. So, but I always wanted to come back to Lexington, always. I just like everything about it. And what I like is how it's gotten, I'm so happy we have these nice hotels here, like the Manchester, that's a different flavor, the restaurants. Because I was at school here, I was 82 through 88. So, I've seen a lot of changes. Mm-hmm. But I think they're for the better. I love this Gatton Park just right down the street.
Yeah.
So happy to have that.
Yeah.
But just Lexington is one of those places that you come here and you just kind of fall in love. Charleston, South Carolina has that going for it. New Orleans does. But once you sober up and get home, then you think, well, maybe this is not a good life choice for me. But, it's one of those places that's intoxicating. Yeah. And I think Lexington is. My best friend from Bucks County, Pennsylvania, which I had a house for 24 years, he came without his wife and 2 children this time. We just hung, I had all these things planned. He got here on Thursday, left on Monday. But I had all these things planned. You know what we did? He wanted to stay here. He wanted to stay here by this pool. And then we would eat. He said, you got sushi here? I said, amazing sushi here in Lexington because of Toyota in Georgetown. So it was fun watching through his eyes because he just couldn't believe how, we would go places and I just leave my key in the truck, because my dogs were in there with the windows down. But he said, you leave your key? I said, yeah. It's Lexington. You know what I mean? I feel so safe here. Mm-hmm. And just everything's the best thing about it, and I hope they keep it this way, too. We're growing inside and getting bigger, but keeping these farms, because once those are gone, we're not going to have the draw. that being able to be right here in less than 5 minutes, I can be on a farm.
Yeah.
Now that is a real plus for people wanting to live in Lexington,
DevelopLex is also sponsored by Community Trust Bank. Hi there, this is Cam Dacey, Commercial Loan Officer at Community Trust Bank and avid DevelopLex in Middle Tech podcast listener. Community Trust offers a wide variety of home loans, commercial loans, and small business loans to suit your financial needs, as well as mobile banking, internet banking, and bill pay. Their friendly and professional staff would love to assist you at one of their 6 Lexington locations. Community Trust Bank is committed to building communities built on trust. Member FDIC, equal housing lender, subject to credit approval.
I think about I'm trying to see the world a little bit through your lens. I live in such a different space, I do just such a different occupation during the day. I think what's really interesting and what I keep hearing you highlight is just kind of the natural beauty in things. And I love that. I think something that I'm curious about is the way, and maybe just speaking just real quickly on like the built environment. And for the podcast is DevelopLex. We talk about not just real estate development, other forms of development, but I'm thinking from your perspective, do you like or dislike or feel neutral or on the way that buildings are being built today, or like, I guess new development? I could see someone that has the eye that you do having such a frustration over modular build coffee shops with no landscaping and no adaptation of its original environment. Or how do you like process that and then think through? And we were talking earlier about the Summit. They did a beautiful development that you had a piece in, if I remember correctly.
I named it.
Really?
It was supposed to be Summit Lexington. And I got up at 3:30 in the morning and drove to Birmingham for the big presentation before their holiday party. And the whole way down, I was just thinking, Summit Lexington, let's call it Summit at Fritz Farm, because, farm to table is wonderful. I hope it'll never go, because once you eat fresh, you don't want to do anything else. But you know how there's trends that come and go. Mm-hmm. The farm will never go out of style in Lexington, Kentucky. Yeah. We're entrenched with farm. Yeah. And that's why, and then I just found out recently they just changed it to just called Fritz Farm now. It's not even called Summit. It's called Fritz Farm.
You're like, I did that. Well, that's what I'm saying. I think you kind of answered the question there of just small details like that. When you have a concept, a design, and just to think for another day on this is how the name should change to incorporate the beauty, while also seeing a need for, this is a very successful development. I love going to X restaurant or X grocery store in this development. It needs to be built, but we can just take a little bit more time and think through the name or think through the design or think through the way that people park and interact with others as they walk in. I don't know.
It makes a difference. Detail, and that family, the Bayer family, they were incredible because they were all about detail. I remember giving that presentation, coming up with this idea of farm animals that were silver. I went out and bought obsolete farm equipment, and then I had them taken to the state penitentiary where they have a state-of-the-art so they can sandblast and paint. And they don't have enough customers, but it's sitting right there. So you pay them to do that, but I was bringing in these tobacco setters or what, all these obsolete things that look like works of art. Had them professionally car painted, and I used them as art because that's our past. You know what I mean? Even kids, they don't know what they are. They almost look like dinosaurs. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. But just little details like that. The wood, those big concrete boxes. Mm-hmm. We saved the wood from the barn when they tore. They had to tear a couple of those big tobacco bars down. And that was the frame to pour so it's the real
Yeah.
tobacco, little stuff.
Small details that maybe you feel as a patron, but you don't even necessarily know why you feel it or notice it. Nobody's thinking, not a lot of people are thinking through that. But when you're there and are experiencing it, you can feel it a little bit.
Yeah, devil's in the details.
Yeah.
That's all my gardens. Like in this house, everywhere you look, I know I can even tell you where it came from, because I like antique stores, junk stores. I find great things. See the base of this, that came off an old building. That, I bought those for $50. But everywhere you look, and that's the way my gardens are too. You just don't see it all at one time. Mm-hmm. It's like a good personality. There is something about meeting someone, and I love an open person, but there's got to be a little bit of mystery about it. You got to learn something. And that's the way people say my house is, because I do all the interiors. I do all that because I have like a couple things in the house that I know that people open up, they're going to find something I put in there. It's like a gold fortune cookie. It's oversized. And then if they happen to open it up, I got the filthiest joke in there, that has to do with fortune cookie. And it's fun if you, I hope,
surprise and delight.
Yeah. Shock and awe.
That's amazing.
But it's, it's just finding beauty in nature. And that's what's so great about Lexington. It's green, there's a lot of green.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
These big old trees and just people, the farmer's market. I mean, my God, what did we do before that?
Yeah.
Having all of that. The people that come here, they just fall in love. They just never want to leave.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Jon, thank you for sharing your spaces and making the world just a more beautiful place with everything you're touching.
Trying my best. Thank you.
we appreciate you being on and everything you do.